Said I'm from San Jose, originally from LA, and this story is very loosely inspired by a place that many kids growing up in Southern California visit often. Very loosely, you'll see. It's called Happiest Place on Earth. Woohoo! And this is just the first couple of scenes. It wasn't the sound of the lap bar snapping up, but its release that woke me, a pressure that suddenly wasn't there to hold me in my seat. I knuckled my sticky eyes and rubbed away sunlight, tried to make sense of the slowly gliding caterpillars below giant pink plastic lemonade leaves. The ride's wheels rumbled against tracks below, and I knew Alice in Wonderland. I was alone in my cart, the other pastel caterpillars trundling contentedly to the exit empty as well. Strange. Alice was always crawling with kids. No costume cast member waiting to welcome us, me, back from Wonderland. I sat still, sure someone would appear to usher me away before I could sneak a second ride. I didn't even remember getting on the first time. As the caterpillar nosed up to the gate, began edging past it, and still no one appeared, I scrambled and ejected myself sideways from the seat onto warm pavement. "Remain seated, please," the pre-recorded voice reminded me. "Sorry," I said. My caterpillar, purple, smirked over my head as I got to my feet. I stood for a long time, blinking myself back to life and watching his brothers pass. Still no one appeared. No citizens of Fantasyland, no Cheshire Cat, no one who might be looking for me. Who am I waiting for? Out of habit, I glanced behind me. Someone might hear my mutterings. But all I saw beyond the shrubbery that separated Wonderland from the rest of this land of wonders was the Matterhorn slope of counterfeit gray stone and an empty walkway. What I thought first was how gray Disneyland looked through the narrow opening. Disneyland! It took a second for me to register what was obviously missing. The seizure-inducing glut of color that always covered the park like living paint, tour groups in matching neon t-shirts, vortex-like lollipops bigger than the heads of the children slobbering on them. Before I could take it all in, the familiar pleasure giggled up in me, a sensation that hadn't diminished with age or repetition or no matter how long it remained dormant. It made me feel like a swimming pool being filled with water for the first time in summer. Even now, just for a moment. I sometimes dreaded the effort of simply being with other people, the disintegrating effect it had on me, but I always rallied when it came to Disneyland. I loved this place. Bits of color still showed here and there, red kiosk umbrellas, rows of collectible pins in shop windows, reminding me of all the shades that were absent and the situation at hand. I pushed my fingers into the front of my hair and pulled them through, grabbed a handful and tugged, thinking. I had an annual pass, visited several times a year, though it had been a while, but I had no idea how I came to be standing in front of an empty ride, waiting in a non-existent line. The pool water rushed into my sinuses. They ditched me. I was almost relieved, like I'd been expecting this. I had to admit I've been drifting a bit lately. Occasionally, I'd find myself standing in a doorway, wondering what I'd come looking for, feeling vaguely guilty, like I'd shirked some forgotten responsibility. I couldn't remember the days before now very clearly, I realized, like when I wrote in pencil, left-handed, like my father, and smudged all the words I'd just written into a blotchy code. But Disneyland took a concerted effort. A long drive, a showing of tickets, ostensible control of one's own faculties, in short. Many chances to wake up and figure out what's going on. Someone had come with me, gotten me on this ride, but they weren't here anymore. A Matterhorn bobsled banged against the tracks, but no good-natured screams trailed in its wake. The shrill, ecstatic music of the teacups tooted and steamed through the dense leaves, but I couldn't hear the dizzy sounds of sugar-filled children and their nauseated parents. Everything was muffled. Nobody comes to Disneyland alone, I told myself. The thin strip of blue sky above was strangely flat, vertiginous, so I looked down. I wore flimsy plastic sandals, not my usual Disneyland sneakers. And my feet hurt, that spreading of flesh and tiny bones that comes after a long day of trolling the park and standing in lines. How long had I been here? The wide cobblestone wheel of Fantasyland spun out before me like the abandoned shield of a knight. The grand, vacant carousel at its center rotated slowly, as if about to come to a stop. the painted horses lowering arthritically. There were no stroller pushers rolling over my heels. The entire place deserted. I could just make out a peculiar mechanical grinding that I'd never noticed before, but that must have always been there beneath the whir of excited voices. It struck me as the involuntary life sound of the park, the motorized equivalent of my own breathing and heartbeat and firing synapses. For a moment, we breathed together. Thank you.
Almost made it.
All right, guys, they're about